So last night, whilst Friday Night SmackDown was on the air on Fox, WWE decided to gut NXT by releasing no more than 12 NXT Superstars. Yes, 12. The string of budget cuts associated with WWE budget cuts, and we'll talk about that as we go through this, but the budget cuts associated with WWE continue, and more talent is being released seemingly every single week at this point. You recall that after WrestleMania earlier this year, back in April, there was lots of discussions about, what this meant, and people were saying, I remember Rob Van Dam, and I don't want to single out really anyone, but I remember Rob Van Dam saying, well, when I was in WWE, every single year after WrestleMania, people got released, and people didn't make a big uproar and make a lot of noise and get angry about it, but pretty much since then, every single month, and again, it feels like every single week we see more talent released by WWE, and once again, there's this weird sort of justification process going on social media. People saying, well, it's part of business, and I understand it's part of business, but at this point, surely WWE need to be held accountable. Is this past sins catching up with them? Is this a consequence of WWE hoarding and stockpiling talent for years and then suddenly deciding, wait a minute, we could release all these people and make more money? But at the end of the day, people that are trying to justify people losing their jobs is wrong. And WWE needs to be pointed out as the bad guy in this situation because once again, we have seen so many more talents released and under the guise of budget cuts. Budget cuts they're not real. They're not real at this point. You have to realize budget cuts that WWE is saying, and John Laurinaitis is phoning up every single person on this list and sending out texts to all the talents on the roster during SmackDown as people were in the ring, as SmackDown was on the air, live on Fox, is sending out texts to people, or people are getting informed that they're being released by WWE as they're actually live producing a television program under the guise of budget cuts. They don't exist. These budget cuts don't exist. Remember, these aren't budget cuts like they're forced. And I think that's what WWE is trying to get away with here. When John Laurinaitis is talking to, say, Bronson Reed, and we'll go through the names, but when John Laurinaitis is talking to Bronson Reed, or if it's Bray Wyatt, if it's Braun Strowman, if it's whoever, he'll say, well, budget cuts, sorry, like my hands are tied. WWE, these aren't forced budget cuts. This is by choice. That's what it is here. WWE doesn't need to release all of their talents. They're choosing to release all of these talents. And I know people are throwing the heat on Nick Khan, and maybe Nick Khan is a driving force behind this, but ultimately the buck always has and always will stop with Vince McMahon. And for whatever reason, Vince McMahon and WWE have decided this year, you know what, all of these people, we don't need you anymore. You're dispensable. We'll get rid of you. It doesn't matter. We'll fire you. And these names that were released by WWE last night are just the latest string of names that have been released by the company. Now, reportedly, and we will get into these names in a second, reportedly, there are major changes for the NXT brand reportedly in the works. I find this story is quite laughable, actually. So this was a story that was reported by PW Insider, who said, quote, there's been a lot of internal talk about significant changes being planned for the NXT brand as of late. Now, these changes being discussed include a new NXT logo, a new lighting, a new look, a different format to the weekly TV show, and a focus on the younger talents. Maybe one of the big changes for NXT is that they lost 12 superstars in one night. 12. Some of them pretty major players on that brand as well. Why? Budget cuts. And it's the same company at the same time that is actively telling people, actively telling investors and shareholders in the company about how much money they're making. We're making so much money right now. We've got record revenues and we've got record profits. Despite this, they then have the nerve, just days after telling the world how much money they're making, they have the nerve to call up people and say, you know what, my hands are tied. We just can't afford to pay you anymore. Budget cuts. Come on. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if I'm Triple H at this point, why bother? Why bother? Triple H spends so much time and effort and money putting together NXT, building up this brand, creating superstars, creating names for the main roster. And once they get called up to the main roster, they get absolutely destroyed, creatively cut off at the knees, and then ruined, and eventually released. or stars now even on NXT that they're actively investing TV time and money and creative trying to foster into something to use on Raw and SmackDown. Eventually they're released as well. And if you're Triple H, your head must be exploding because you must think to yourself, why am I even bothering? I go through all this stress and all this frustration and all this creative time, and I put all of this time into all of this, and what happens? They just get released at the end of the day anyway. Why? Because Vince McMahon and Nick Khan suddenly decide we're going to change the budgets and have budget cuts and release these talents to make even more money so we can tell people we're making more money. You can't tell me at this point something isn't going on. Something has to be going on. Whether it's WWE preparing themselves to be sold, or if it's WWE trying to really, really, really drive up the price so much, or the stock price so much, or drive up the value of the company by posting these record profits and these record revenues to eventually be sold to a Disney, to an NBC Universal. I don't know. But it's funny because an NBC Universal, who could be a potential purchaser of WWE, at the same time as that, they could be one of the companies to buy WWE. They're concerned that WWE is releasing all of these talents. They're concerned that WWE released Bray Wyatt due to budget cuts and these other names. And AEW are signing the likes of Daniel Bryan and CM Punk. It's crazy. It just seems crazy. And WWE may look at these names like they're just names on a piece of paper. They're not real people, but you have to realize these are real people. They have livelihoods, and some people have made huge sacrifices to go to WWE, whether it's moving country, whether it's moving to the other side of the country, whether it's deserting their family, whether it's whatever. And WWE ultimately has shown, and they've shown their hand here. They don't care. They don't care whatsoever. At a time, it must be pointed out, at a time where Adam Cole's contract is coming up after SummerSlam, where Pete Dunne's contract is coming up after SummerSlam, if you're either one of them, how can you believe a word of what WWE is talking to you about right now? If you're Adam Cole, who last night, this is what's crazy as well, last night reportedly he was in Tampa, Florida, for last night's SmackDown taping. According to Fightful Select, a report by Fightful Select said he was described to be in a high-level meeting with Vince McMahon, Adam Cole, I guess to discuss his contract, I guess to discuss his future and signing a new deal. How could you believe a word that this guy is saying to you? Because at the same time that you are having this meeting, at the same time you are talking about your future within the company, whether or not you want to stay on with this company, a bunch of people that you work with, including one of your closest friends in Bobby Fish, is getting fired. What's the difference between them and Adam Cole? Not a lot. Because in 6 months' time, maybe Vince McMahon and Nick Khan decide, you know what, actually Adam Cole, he's too much money as well, we'll get rid of him too. How can you believe a word they're saying? Furthermore, if I'm Adam Cole, I would take it as a personal insult. I would take it as a personal insult that I have spent, 4 years? Adam Cole debuted at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn in 2017. And he spent 4 years building this brand up. 4 years putting his heart, his soul, his sweat, his blood, his tears into this brand. Elevating it from a 1-hour show on the WWE Network to a 2-hour show on the USA Network. And you can talk what you want about that transition to the USA Network. You can talk about NXT losing their identity and the problems that it obviously has. But Adam Cole has put everything, the last 4 years of his career and life, into developing this brand, helping elevate this brand and take it to the next level. Arguably, he's been on the show far longer than he should have been. I think that's a fair argument to make. And he's put in all of that effort, all of that work. And at the same time, he's deciding, is it worth me staying? If I stay, do I stay on NXT or do I go to Raw or SmackDown, which is a risk as well? All of that. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? At the same time, you see the WWE and the guy you're talking to, because again, the buck stops with him. The guy you're talking to, Vince McMahon, absolutely gut NXT at the same time. So 4 years for nothing. All that hard work for nothing. You're sitting there, you're talking to this man, and you know exactly how he perceives you and exactly how he perceives NXT. He perceives NXT as developmental, regardless of all the hard work you've put in, regardless of all the interviews and the promos and the matches that you've had and telling people this is the main roster, this is the same as Raw and SmackDown, and it means something to be part of the NXT brand. Vince McMahon, even if he hasn't told you to your face, is telling you it's worthless. It means nothing. And you realistically want to sign a contract with that promotion? How can you believe a word he's saying? You can't. You can't. The man's word means nothing. You are just names and words and letters on a paper. That's it. So if I'm Adam Cole, I'm saying, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm out of here because you've wasted my time. And the same with Pete Dunne. Why am I sticking around here? I could be a name you get rid of next week. How do I feel safe? Where is the job security in this company? As a pro wrestler, your job security is pretty low anyway, but now it's non-existent. Even the big names are worried that they're going to go. And it's just, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, we are going to get into the names as to who has been released by WWE. But this story is just, it sucks as anyone whenever they get released. But these latest ones, as SmackDown was on the air, it's craziness. And each person has their own unique story, so we'll get into it. Arguably the biggest name to be let go last night was Bronson Reed, former North American champion. Bronson Reed, first of all, actually as well, before we get into the names, the majority of the talents, of course, have NXT contracts, which means they have 30-day non-compete clauses, as is typical of NXT deals. This is according to Fightful Select as well. This would mean that they're going to be free agents from Sunday, September 5th. Of course, that just so happens to be the date of All Out as well. I don't know how many people will show up at All Out. These aren't huge game-changing names like a Daniel Bryan, like a Bray Wyatt, like a CM Punk, like etc. So I don't know if they'll show up at All Out. These are names, and we are going to be doing a video later today that certainly names or companies like Impact Wrestling, Ring of Honor, MLW, the NWA, they're certainly going to be looking into. So I think that's interesting as well. But they have the 30-day non-compete clauses. So Bronson Reed, again, was the most surprising one. He was the North American champion only back in May. We're talking 3 months ago. 3 months ago, he held the second biggest championship, male championship on that brand. He was the North American Championship. He won it on May 18, dropped it very quickly, actually, to Isaiah Swerve Scott on June 29. And everyone just assumed he dropped it because he's getting called up to the main roster. Those rumors continued because he was having dark matches. He was having dark matches before Raw and before SmackDown. And with the likes of Karrion Kross and the likes of Tegan Knox and Shotzi Blackheart and all that kind of stuff, they're all showing up on Raw and SmackDown. So the assumption was, well, Bronson Reed, he's showing up soon. And he didn't. Instead, he got released. So how can you, again, if you're Triple H, how can you justify any form of job security that you could be the NXT North American champion and 3 months later you could not have a job? Out of no fault of your own, by the way. We ain't talking behavior issues. We're just talking WWE decided to let them go. They're expendable. And I don't think people realize that these dark matches that were going on before Raw and SmackDown, I think people thought, oh, these are just for Vince McMahon and the creative team and the officials in WWE to get a good feel and to figure out what they're going to do. What they're going to do on whatever brand they go on, whether it's Raw or SmackDown. In reality, it looks like Bronson Reed was competing for his job. In reality, maybe Vince McMahon or whoever backstage realized, she's not that good, fire him. That is ridiculous. Now, Bronson Reed, wherever he goes, and he won't struggle for work either. Obviously, I think we have to think about maybe a visa. There might be a visa issue. I don't know. But I don't think he'll struggle wherever he goes. I think he'll have offers from your Impact Wrestlings, from your Ring of Honors, from your MLWs, from the NWAs. I think even maybe AEW. That might be someone that they're interested in signing. There aren't a ton of names on this list that I think AEW would really be interested in, frankly. But I think Bronson Reed would be one of them. And this guy had something. There's no doubt about it. Big guys like him that are athletic, I think he could talk. He could improve on his promos, obviously, but he could talk. He had something about him. The reason you could tell he had something about him is because he was the NXT North American champion just 3 months ago. Obviously, people in NXT liked him. And if WWE weren't interested in using him on the main roster, I'm sure Triple H and Shawn Michaels and the people that run NXT would have been very happy to keep him. I think, again, surely if you're Triple H, it must make your head explode because you must say, look, you told me, get the title off of Bronson Reed. We're going to call him up to the main roster. These are the names we want for Raw and SmackDown. And you go, well, I can't do much about that. No choice. And then instead of calling him up, you fire him. That is madness. That is madness. And if you're Triple H, honestly, I know Triple H has got a big stake in that company. He's got stock. He's not going anywhere. But realistically, when do you throw your hands up and just go, this isn't even worth it anymore? Because my work means nothing. And I know exactly what you think of NXT. Now, some people could be all conspiracy theory and say this is Vince McMahon's reaction to AEW defeating NXT. Maybe it is. But it's just, I think it's crazy. I think it's absolutely just insane. Absolutely madness. Absolutely madness, and just, it's shocking. Absolutely shocking. And where'd you go? Where'd you go with that, honestly? Now, another name released, and there was lots of them, was Bobby Fish. Now, in reality, this one was shocking because Bobby Fish, of course, is an established member of the NXT brand. Obviously, he was part of the Undisputed Era, which, obviously, that era is over. I know, obviously, it was a faction and it could only last so long, but maybe there was hopes that at some point down the line, maybe on the main roster, they'd come back together, or they'd do something. But the Undisputed Era is officially over. That era is over. And now Bobby Fish has been let go. Out of all of the names to be released out of the Undisputed Era, you'd probably say Bobby Fish was the most likely. He's older. He's had a significant amount of injuries in NXT. It feels like at least once or twice a year he goes down with injuries, whether it's torn triceps, whether it's a knee issue, whether it's a bicep issue, whether it's whatever. He's had his fair share. He only just recently came back from injury. So maybe that one isn't the most surprising name out there. And to be honest with you, since the Undisputed Era split, Bobby Fish hasn't done a lot of that much. Yes, he was injured, but he's come back and just been around, really. I think that maybe there might have been something to say about maybe him getting involved with Diamond Mine, considering Roderick Strong was involved in that. We'll speak about Diamond Mine in a second. But that one didn't stun me, I will be honest with you. Once they started releasing names, look, it's a high-profile name. But if what that report is saying there previously, saying that the major changes are coming to NXT, if they're going certainly into a situation where they're saying, look, the old NXT of bringing in maybe these more established independent names that are up there in age, we're not really interested in doing that anymore, then that's not totally surprising that Bobby Fish would be let go. Obviously, though, Bobby Fish is incredibly talented, incredibly experienced, and you need those kind of names on the brand. I think the release of a Bobby Fish speaks volumes. It speaks volumes to what WWE's real, true perception is of NXT right now. And these changes are real. These changes are very real. Another name released was Leon Ruff. Now, Leon Ruff had been signed with the WWE only since October 2020. He wasn't even with the company for a year. Now, he had made some appearances the year before, but he had been away from NXT since May 11, where he lost to Pete Dunne. He made his return to action last night on 205 Live, which was taped last week. He was on the show even though he didn't have a job anymore. And that happened before. That happened at the last round of cuts, where you had all these people going, I'm going to be on TV tonight, but I'm fired at the same time. Again, a former North American champion. Now, you could argue the North American Championship reign he had was this whole underdog thing with Damian Priest and Johnny Gargano. Was he a legitimate, credible NXT North American champion? That's to be debated, I guess. I think it was in hope that he would get over as this big underdog. But, again, a guy that wasn't even with the company for a year. And talk about the ups and downs. The ups and downs in the sense that in October he was signed. Later on, a couple months later, or even that month, he's the NXT North American champion. Fast forward to not even a year later, he's gone. Again, says everything WWE obviously thinks about that brand. Everything. And it's insanity. This one was really surprising. TylerRUSS. Now, some people would say, why is that surprising? Well, again, we're talking about someone that signed with WWE in December of last year. He was with the company for 8 months. And his release obviously is a massive surprise because he was a member of the new Diamond Mine faction with Roderick Strong, Malcolm Bivens, and Heichmann. And the Diamond Mine only debuted, a month ago? If that? And it makes you wonder, how much does Triple H and this NXT creative team, how much do they even know about these cuts? Because if they did, why on earth would he be involved in the Diamond Mine faction? It speaks volumes. It speaks volumes. Now, Russ last wrestled on the July 20 NXT show as he and Strong lost to Bobby Fish, who was also released, and the NXT Cruiserweight Champion Kushida. And this is surprising as well because there was that report by Fightful Select, which came out about a month ago when Diamond Mine debuted. And they said that NXT, they're focusing heavily on the Cruiserweight division right now, and they're making it a priority. And we're going to have people like Roderick Strong and Kushida and Bobby Fish and TylerRUSS all compete in that division, and they're going to really make it a focal point of NXT going forward? Well, obviously not, because TylerRUSS is gone. And these cuts are so ravenous at this point that they don't even care. It goes to show it was the same with Aleister Black, and it was the same with Braun Strowman. So I suppose we shouldn't be surprised with TylerRUSS, but it goes to show they don't even care the story that's on television at this point. They'll just cut it short. Back in the day, you used to at least pay off a story, then someone would get released. They would do a job on television, then they would be released, right? Because you've got to tie things up, continuity. WWE at this point doesn't even care about continuity anymore. So again, if I'm Roderick Strong, I would think, why do I bother? Why do I bother? Now, another name released was Jake Atlas, and this was a surprising one as well, considering how much he does for WWE's community outreach program. Atlas signed with WWE in October 2019 after appearing on the 2018 episode of Celebrity Undercover Boss with WWE Chief Brand Officer Stephanie McMahon as an independent wrestler. He was then hired as a WWE ambassador on the show and made several Be a Star appearances. His last match came on last week's 205 Live show, a win over Sterling. And to be honest with you, look, he was an openly part of the LBGTQ community. He's an openly gay wrestler. And again, he was a big part of WWE's community outreach program and the Be a Star appearances. Not that that's job security in that sense, but he was factored in. And it goes to show that this whole community outreach that WWE does and the whole Be a Star rally, it's just false. It's all false. Well, we look how great we are. Look how great we are. And we're hiring people. It's all about inclusion here. I suppose it's all about inclusion. We'll fire you as well. And Jake Atlas, again, he was featured on NXT television. He was going to get a bit of a push recently. He was involved in the whole Cameron Grimes LA Knight story because he was having matches against both of those guys. And again, it all means nothing. And it's just this cutthroat ruthlessness that is insane. Another name, surprising, was Mercedes Martinez. I think, again, this comes back to, obviously, these changes of NXT moving in a more youth-focused direction. This was a surprise because, again, she was featured in. Yes, she's 40 years of age, but she signed with WWE in January of 2020, worked in the Mae Young Classic in 2017 and 2018. She last wrestled on the June 29 NXT show where she and Jake Atlas lost to Xylee and Boa in a mixed tag team match. Martinez suffered a reported concussion in that match. She's been away since. So ultimately as well, WWE might have fired someone who's suffering from a concussion right now. That's nice too. That's nice. Now, Martinez, of course, was meant to be part of Retribution. She was for a couple of weeks on the main roster. She decided to get rid of that and desert that, and that was probably the best thing for her to do. And I recall with Martinez, a story with her that she had ultimately decided to sign with WWE over AEW because she was, again, 40 years of age, realized that she may not have so many years left in the ring and wanted to transition into becoming a coach at the Performance Center and coaching younger talent. Boy, I'm sure she's glad she made that decision now. Now, she is a name that I think may show up in AEW. I think AEW could use her, certainly in their women's division. I think she would be a great fit in Impact as well in the Knockouts division. Obviously, Ring of Honor are working on launching, of course, their women's division as well. So she'll have options, certainly. She'll be fine. But it's just, the cuts are just, they're brutal. They're absolutely brutal. Asha Hale was, when you get into these kind of names, they weren't totally featured that much on NXT television that much. So again, these ones aren't totally surprising. Again, when you're looking at people being cut from WWE or NXT, these ones aren't totally surprising. He signed with WWE in January of this year, so again, didn't even last, 8 months. His last match came on 205 Live last Friday. I lost to Drake Maverick. I think he's a former Evolve star, but again, these ones aren't totally surprising, so it'll be interesting to see where these guys end up. Giant Zanjeer is a slightly surprising one for me because we did a watch-along here on the channel. We did a watch-along of Superstar Spectacle back in January. I think it was in January. And he was featured in that. And he was a tag team with Shanky, who, of course, now is a backup to Jinder Mahal on Monday Night Raw, featured in. And he teamed up with Ricochet and Rey Mysterio for a win over Dolph Ziggler, Cesaro, Baron Corbin, and Shinsuke Nakamura at the time. And he was green, obviously, but this is a guy that's 7'2", 340 pounds. And obviously WWE is looking to break into the Indian market. And You don't see many people that look like this guy, and obviously it was the same with Shanky, and I thought as soon as I saw him at Superstar Spectacle in January, yes, he's very green, and a lot of these guys that are over 7 foot sometimes struggle to work, but he's got everything that WWE would be looking for, and this is a guy that moved from India to the United States, and obviously moved in January prior to the pandemic, but obviously had to go through all of this stuff in the pandemic, and now he's fired. Again, it just goes to show this ruthlessness of WWE, that they don't care. They don't care at all. Another name was Zechariah Smith. He was a former wrestler that was, that I think he had appeared, I want to say a couple of times, a handful of times on NXT. Again, these sort of names aren't the most surprising at all. I think he might have been another Evolve name. I'm not too sure on that. Kona Reeves, this one was surprising. Now, he hadn't been seen on NXT television for a while. I think he had an injury or something like that, because he had not wrestled since the February 19, 2020 NXT show where he took a loss to Keith Lee. He was signed with NXT or WWE back in May of 2014. This guy was with WWE for like 7 years. But there was a report recently by Fightful Select. This is why I say this one was surprising, because if you look at that, you would say, well, that's not surprising. He hasn't been on NXT television in ages. But there was a report by Fightful Select recently which basically said that the NXT officials were really impressed with him, and he had been out with an injury, but he was recovering, and there were plans in place, and they thought very highly of him. Not so much now that he's gone. So it's funny that if these Fightful Select reports are accurate, that 1 week they're high on someone, the other week they're being told that they're going because they've got to let him go. Because budget cuts, these fake budget cuts. Ari Sterling was, again, one of these names that I suppose wasn't so surprising. The interesting thing, once again, was a name that he was on last night's 205 Live show, which was taped last week. He wrestled when he was no longer with the company against the Cruiserweight champion Kushida. It just goes to show the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing, or I don't even know if the left hand cares what the right hand's doing. Finally, last name was Stephen Smith. He was a wrestler. He worked as a referee. I think he was signed in October of 2019. He worked full-time for NXT. Again, these kind of names aren't totally surprising as some of the bigger names, but it just goes to show this just pure lack of care, and just it's all about budget cuts, these non-existent budget cuts. But look, guys, as always, this is just one man's opinion. What are your thoughts on all of these NXT releases we saw last night? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. I'll do my best to respond and reply to all of your comments. Really enjoy interacting with you guys, talking about WWE, AEW, Impact Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling, all things pro wrestling here on the channel. So be sure to get involved in the community, drop a comment below. All opinions are welcome. If you have enjoyed this video, please do smash a like on the like button too. Really does help us out here on YouTube. Got the rankings and get into people's recommendation feeds if they haven't seen our videos previously. But most importantly, if you haven't already, please do subscribe to Wrestling News 365. You can do that by clicking the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right now. Or if you wait a few seconds, there'll be a subscribe button at the end of this video, along with another video for you to watch. Thank you very much for watching this, listening, streaming, or have you come across this video today. And I'll speak to you again very, very soon.
Hey guys, thank you for watching, listening, streaming, or however you come across this video today. Be sure to click on the video on the right there to watch our next video, or click the bottom there to subscribe, or the bottom right hand corner. Thank you very much, and I'll speak to you again very soon.